Well, welcome, Jamie from Mad Dog Collective. I'm really glad you made some time to come and join us. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and, a bit about your background as well, obviously the band. And, it'd be nice to hear your story.
Yeah, nice one, Mark. Yeah, thanks for asking me. And, it's nice to be here.
Yeah.
Really nice looking studio as well. I like nice studios.
Yeah, we've got a good team down here doing the podcast. And, this is the second one. And trying to have some kind of interesting characters and interesting guests, all with an interesting story and background.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to kick off and tell us a bit about the early days, where it all started for you.
All right, cool. Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Gwent Valleys. I grew up just outside Merthyr Tydfil in a town called Blaina. It's in Gwent, which is like the most deprived place in Europe now, but it wasn't when I was growing up. It was, I don't know, it was like it was 3 coal mines in my area, so everybody worked hard and played hard, and I don't know, I'm of a certain age. Punk rock had a massive influence on the valleys. And, I'm one of the bastard children of Thatcher, as I like to call myself. And
Brothers, sisters, or?
Yeah, I got quite a big family, brothers and sisters, and I got a really big family. So, my family quite well known where I'm from. Everyone knows who we are. So, it's quite,
respected.
Yeah, very. Yeah. My dad was he was a gentleman until he wasn't. He was a real hard man. He played a lot of rugby up here, and he was, he was a bit of a legend. So he was quite a lot to live up to. And I don't know, like growing up was quite cool in the town I was in, because everybody had some money. Everybody sort of knew each other. Do you know what I mean? It was, and then we had the miners' strike in the 80s, and I suppose that's where it became political, really, was growing up in Thatcher's Britain and the miners' strike. I seen my town turn from having 3 coal mines to having nothing.
Wow.
Like the biggest industry where I'm from at the moment is drugs. Like that's the only thing that really makes the valleys roll. There's no real industry left. It's like really tragic. So I seen it go from, people earning really good money and going, they worked hard and they played hard to being on £12 a week strike pay, and miners' strike lasted for over a year.
Gosh.
Seen a lot of stuff happen during our time. Do you know what I mean? The police were really violent. They took over our area.
Wow.
We had lots of squaddies. There was lots of army wearing police boiler suits. They had pickaxe handles, and they were really violent. And so there was loads of violence on the picket line. And I sort of cut my teeth on being political. And I grew up in a Labour stronghold anyway, and my family were very staunch. Do you know what I mean? My granddad had fought in the Spanish Civil War, so like he was quite my dad's dad. They were quite handy people,
fighting men.
Say. Yeah, very much. And he was a bare knuckle fighter and all that as well. So they were all very political. Do you know what I mean? And then like with the miners' strike, I became really political. Punk rock had happened. Do you know what I mean? It was like, yeah.
Is that when you got your first taste of kind of music through punk rock, or?
Yeah, definitely. Is the DIY of punk rock, really, wasn't it? It was like, before that, I was 70s supergroups like Floyd and all that, and suddenly it was like this Pistols. I remember a Tuesday night. It was a John Peel show, and he played 2 tracks off Nevermind the Bollocks, the Sex Pistols, and that changed my life.
Wow.
That really changed my life. I was about 10 or 11. I was really young, so 77, 78, and it just changed my life. Like overnight, it sort of changed the valleys.
Yeah.
Everyone became glue sniffers, and like we couldn't really afford expensive clothes. People were in bin liners and sewing zips to their jeans and that. I mean, like Vivienne Westwood, she created a whole punk uniform, didn't she?
Yeah.
But it was for us, it was just about the noise, really, and
anybody
could do
it. Yeah, and being able to rebel, I guess.
Yeah. So I sort of played around with that stuff. There was a couple of bands like Pie Rabbis. People were looking for really offensive names, like Pork Pie Rabbis. It was like supposed to be like quite offensive. I remember thinking, that doesn't sound really offensive to me. But I did a bit of screeching and a bit of shouting, because I wrote stuff from when I was a kid. I like writing, so I like writing words, and I like poetry.
Yeah.
So I'd always been into writing stuff. And
have you ever done singing, or has it always been kind of?
I jumped about and did a couple of things with like little young punk bands. We were just kids in youth hostels, you know what I mean, and in youth clubs and and then for me, I don't know, really, drugs sort of really took off for me, I suppose.
Was that using or dealing or
bit
of both?
Yeah, a bit of both, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was 15. We went to Glastonbury, and I never went home really.
Oh, wow.
I just sort of like became like a new age traveller boy, and there was a lot of punks on the road. There was a lot of, so we were sighty kids. I was in and out of trouble, criminal from a young age as well.
I suppose there's not a lot else to do.
Well, suddenly there was nothing, So it was like crime was the
But it went
thing,
through the roof, right?
Yeah,
a lot of
very
teenagers.
much. Yeah, it did for me especially. Like,
And were you quite a fighter back then? Were you getting into scuffles and?
Yeah, I
and all
was.
that?
It's really bizarre because like I grew up in a big, loving, dysfunctional family, but like the only time I ever heard my family talk about fear was when they talked about other people fearing us, and I was consumed with fear. I'm the oldest boy. I didn't know that, but I know I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin, and I felt like quite on a good day I used to feel like I was adopted, and on a bad day I used to feel like I was an alien.
Yeah.
And I know that uncomfortability to be feared today. So I behaved fearlessly from a really young age. My dad taught us all to box as kids, and I did karate and judo, and I did all of those combat stuff, rugby. And I was really aggressive from a really young age because it covers up fear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't know the words to say what I felt like, but I knew how I felt. So, So that was sort of like my lifestyle, really. And
Did you leave home quite early?
yeah, by about 15, I was never home.
Wow.
And,
That must have been quite distressing for your folks.
yeah. I think it was a bit of relief for them as well,
Really?
to be honest. Yeah.
They're like, see you, Jamie.
I got a lot of trouble. I got into a lot of trouble in my area. Do you know what I mean? And then living on the road was like lots of other misfits. Do you know what I mean? So it was.
Did you kind of find your clan on the road?
Yeah. It was like the peace convoy were a thing at the time, Rainbow Tribe and all that, and then suddenly, like after the bean field and all of that stuff, it was. There was punks and on the road. There was New Age travellers. It was, I don't know, they call them New Travellers now, but back then it was called New Age travellers, and they just wasn't hippies.
Yeah.
We wasn't hippies. Yeah. So like in 1987, I remember it kicking off at Glastonbury, and lots of security wagons got burnt, and it was a bit of a traveller site there, and they were very different to the peace convoy travellers, very much. We stand up for ourselves. No one's going to do we're in the bean field, and we're not hippies.
Yeah.
So if you come to beat us up, we're going to have a go.
Yeah.
And,
Gotcha.
And a lot of that come from the picket lines of the miners' strike. And for me, really, do you know what I mean, was like, I wasn't scared of the police.
Wow.
I mean, I just see them as it was just
a nuisance.
Thatcher's fascist boot boys. That's what they were, wasn't they? They was just there to enforce, and Thatcher was anti-traveller. She was anti, it was like, anyway, where they was talking about rebellion.
Repetitive beats.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember the music
will be
of repetitive beats?
disallowed. Yeah.
Yeah. More than 10 of you in the field, making a noise.
Crazy.
You know what I mean? But like I saw, I suppose that's why I got into heroin, because the sites would just got flooded with heroin.
Yeah.
I have my own theories on it. I mean,
what do you think?
I believe it was definitely government funded. 100%. They flooded us. I watched them flood us.
Yeah, it's happened before.
I could buy heroin on site off some people that because we it was just dealer users. Do you know what I mean? It's like we weren't being rich.
Weren't getting rich off it. It was just
And there was gear turning up on site that was better than the heroin that they could get off the Asian boys in Bristol.
Wow.
And they were getting banging gear, but this was like next level. It's a story that I tell sometimes, and sometimes I don't. But I'll tell you because I just feel like the mood for it. But there used to be two guys. There was a site called A46, which was Naughty Fix, is what they called it. And lots of people died on ours between Bristol and Bath. And I lived under Viaduct for a bit, and I moved around a lot, but I was very secular in the way I lived. I didn't really like living on big sites because I lived the way I lived. But these two guys used to turn up on a Friday, and they used to turn up every Friday in a transit van, in this old transit van, and they used to lay quite a large amount of heroin on me and my mate. And every week we was like £200 or £300 short. And I'd get in the van, and he used to give 9 ounces to me and 9 ounces to my mate. And I used to get in the van, and I go like, listen, brother, I'm about 300 short. And he go, just make it up on the next one. So I go, okay, cool, I'll make it up on the next one. And this gear was absolutely banging. Do you know what I mean? It was putting people over. Do you know what I mean? It was really strong heroin. And every week these two geezers turned up. And then in 2012, I was in recovery. I was clean and sober, and I was at Boomtown. I made amends to a few different people about like the way we lived on the road, and I made some of my amends to them. I do a 12-step program, and they were part of my step 9 about making amends. And So I ended up making amends to a few people, and we ended up with about 10 of us sat around a fire, all people off the road, and there's not many of us left. And we were having a conversation, and I said to my friend, I said, do you remember them two guys, your mates? I said, you went to school with that they used to turn up every week and I used to have the heroin off. And she was like, they weren't my friends, Jay, they was your friends. And I was like, no, they wasn't my friends. They grew up with you, they went to school with you. And she was like, Jay, they told me they was your friends. And then someone else went, no, they were so-and-so's friends, weren't they? And it was like, and then suddenly every one of us realised that no one actually knew who they was.
They'd infiltrated the
Yeah,
group.
and I just think they was MI5. I genuinely believe that's who they was.
Flip.
I mean, I watched them do the same. I went to jail and I was away for quite a long time. And I come out in the mid-90s and everything had changed. You know, it was like, because we did the first rave, it was 87, 88. I went to jail. Then I came out like 7 years later. And yeah, suddenly ketamine killed the party. Do you know what I mean? It was like everyone was on massive methadone scripts. And, you know, I remember I had this Mercedes lorry and I remember trying to sell the wheels off this lorry to my mate. And he was like, you can't sell the wheels, Jay. Like, we're travellers. And I was like, I haven't travelled for a year.
Yeah.
I'm scared to go out to my doctor's catchment area. I'm on 120 mil of methadone a day. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Is that quite a lot?
Yeah, that is a hell of a lot.
Jeez.
Yeah, I was on that and using heroin on top, so because it enabled you to have a double habit.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we just couldn't move. Do you know what I mean? And so lots of people from that time are gone.
Well, when you were banged up, was there drugs inside?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of drugs in prison.
Really?
Yeah. It's really...
Sounds so naive, don't I?
Yeah. But,
Sorry.
yeah, it's very different. It was very different during those times. Like, there was a lot of heroin, but it was quite undercover. So people smoking cannabis was cool in jail, but if you did heroin, you kept it undercover. These days, prisons are run on heroin and run on spice. They're very different today, but back then it was, you know, people...
Surely they can smell the
people
cannabis in
wouldn't really have that.
the whole wing. Surely the guards could smell it and they'd just turn a blind eye, maybe.
Well, yeah, it keeps people quiet, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It keeps people compliant.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's why they have prison doctors. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like...
Wow.
But yeah, it was a really strange thing because I came out, you know, and it's why I wrote the song about Ketamine Killed the Party.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's a great track.
yeah.
I like it.
Well, the line is, ketamine killed a party, ketamine killed a rave, ketamine created dubstep, Skrillex behave, innit? Because everything turned into dubstep. And it's just a throwaway line. But
Love it.
yeah, I had a funny experience, and I'm going to tell you a funny experience. I was at Boomtown, and my friend, they were doing the Lions Den stage, and she said, come backstage, this guy, my friend of mine, Simon, wants to meet you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Do you know what I mean? I thought he's just some superstar DJ, and she said, he really likes your band. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, cool, and so I met this guy and he was like all a bit like, he was just really gentle, quite a gentle soul. And she said, oh, this is Jamie from Mad Dog Collective. And he said, oh, I really like that Ketamine Killed the Party. And I was like, yeah, man, do you know what I mean? It's like, and he repeated the line back to me. He said, Ketamine killed the party, Ketamine killed the rev, Ketamine created dubstep, Skrillex behave. And I went, yeah, do you know what I mean? I was just taking a piss. I said, you know, and he went, I'm Skrillex. And I was
fuck.
like, oh, wow, man, that's like
That
really
is
cool
cool.
to me, do. And he went, what does it mean? I went, well, you know, you dubstep Christmas tunes, you know, like everything turned into dubstep. And, and I sort of blamed you for it. Do you know what I mean? And he just laughed. He thought it was really funny.
That is cool, man.
Because it was just it's a line that's like...
Yeah. What's he like?
He was just really nice. He was really gentle. We just had a little conversation like that, and off he went, and it was just like... I thought,
I've got to meet
really
this guy.
cool.
You'll mention me in his song.
Yeah, he was like, you know, you bigged me up in your song, and I was like,
Hey.
cool. So yeah, it was cool. But yeah, so for me, you know, I really, you know, this is such a, you know, like being a conspiracy theorist, do you know what I mean? It's like, because that's what you get labelled as, like, for saying, like, you know, believe that the government and MI5 would do that. I know people that think there's no way they would do that. You know, the truth for me is, like even when we all used heroin, we were all really skinny, but we still sat around fireplaces talking about revolutions, and we still played guitar and we still did music. But when I came out of jail, like 7 years later, ketamine, everybody was just talking about, have we got another bump? No one was actually talking about revolution anymore. Everyone's just saying, have we got any more of this? You know, I mean, it really changed the face of it, you know. Like the ketamine has flooded this country now. It's all synthetic Chinese stuff. Do you know what I mean? But people ain't talking about revolutions anymore.
No.
You know, it's like...
Well, I'm open-minded about that stuff because, you know, there's been documentaries about the CIA and the crack epidemic and, you know, keeping because it tended to be aimed at a certain demographic, you know, unemployed, broke black people, and who were becoming a problem. And, I mean, it could just be conspiracy, but, wilder, stranger things have happened.
Well, I know Thatcher felt travellers were a real problem.
There was a risk to the.
There was a real problem. You know what I mean? Like what happened at the Beanfield when they really smashed people up really badly. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, and then getting moved from place to place. I remember all that going on. Do you know what I mean? It was like you just couldn't park up anywhere. One police force would move you on to the next police's forces. Then, do you know what I mean? So, I definitely think that they're capable of real dark stuff.
Yeah,
definitely.
And, did you come across kind of rich kids who were rebelling, kind of trying to join your, life on the road and be crusties was like a cool name.
Yeah, well, a lot of people they got called Trustafarians and that, didn't they? And it's like, but they were just rebelling like us, isn't it? Really, it's like it's like people running away from the circus to go and live in a normal life. People run away from a normal life to go and live in the circus.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like, because I met some really rich kids. Like. I grew up on an estate, and some of them grew up on a different kind of estate. They grew up on country estates, but like they're really cool. It's like Swampy. Swampy's a really nice guy. We just played at his 50th birthday party.
Oh, really?
In Tipi Valley in Wales.
So he did come down from the tree in the end.
Yeah, man. Yeah, his son is locked up at the moment over the HR2 stuff. Do you know what I mean? So he's like,
jeez,
and he is from a country estate in Devon. He's from old money.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? But like, and I remember him at Newbury, and I remember the sort of kid he was. He was. I really like him.
Yeah.
I really like him. He's a soft. He's a gentle soul. But like, he's from old money, and he really cares about the planet. He's got a lovely little place in Tipi Valley. I don't know if you know what Tipi Valley is, but they bought a load of land between them, and you have to live under canvas for 5 years before you can build a structure. And he has a little structure. He's got a garden on his roof.
Nice.
He's a really cool cat. But he invited us down to play at his 50th birthday party.
Yeah.
Because he likes my band, do you know what I mean? And I used to take the piss out of him back in the day, do you know what I mean? Because they were posh kids, and because I like them, I like posh kids. I don't really care, do you know what I mean? It's like, try and be as classless as possible, innit? Do you know what I mean?
So when you came out, and then what were your kind of options? Did you think, am I going to go back to Wales? Am I going to go to London? Or what was your thinking after that much time away?
Yeah, well, the thing is like I'd been in jail with people that were talking in telephone numbers, like they were big drug dealers. So I thought, I think I'll become a big drug dealer like them. But I didn't realise that I was always going to break the Scarface first rule, which is, don't get high on your own supply. And being a drug addict, I wasn't very successful at doing that thing. So, just around other criminals, really. And then back on the road, I left the country for a while. Criminal justice bill, a few little things happened there, didn't they? And, it wasn't very safe to be in this country at the time.
Not for your traveller.
No, Ireland was cool.
Okay.
The Irish looked after us a bit, and Europe was cool. They were the more the forgotten years.
I remember the sound system. They used to go to Belgrade. An English one used to be Convoy. Spiral Tribe. Yeah.
So Hexy and all that. She's amazing DJ. I like all the Spiral crew. DIY, same. So, I mean, Exodus. It was all the big rigs and that. Did the big parties over in Normandy, 94,
what about
95.
On You?
Yeah. Wow. Spiral Tribe's still going.
Jeez.
Hixie and Ashley lives in France, and Ashley's still DJing X in the mix. I really like what they do. But, it's very... Keith Desert Storm sound system. Keith died a couple of years ago.
Wow.
But, there's still quite a bit of that going on. Still quite a bit of...
So, when you were hanging around in that set, did you reach a point where you realised you had a problem, with your kind of the amount of drugs you were taking or your lifestyle? Or
I suppose because I surrounded myself with other people who took drugs like me. So it was.
So it felt normal.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah,
very much. A lot of people who I grew up with and a lot of people I was on the road with are dead now. I think prison kept me alive for a long time. It's
really?
Helped me survive for quite a big period. Yeah, and I just carried on in that way. Really, I don't know. It's like you become quite entrenched in something quite a lot, don't you? I mean, especially being like a subculture and
not having to work every day. You're operating in a different existence.
Very much. Yeah, criminality seems like the way to live, and I like scrap metal. I love scrap metal as it goes. But it was crazy times. I don't know if you remember 2000 DS with Guy DS. He was a big influence on a guy. I really liked what he did. I mean, he was a Cumbrian boy. He was a Valley boy as well. So it was like, but the band 2000 DS, they did all the big parties then. scrapped a lot, scrapped the church, and I just like what Gary was about. And he passed away a few years ago. He died tragically in an accident in Jamaica with his family, which was quite tragic. And
Oh no.
yeah, I really liked what he was about. So yeah, it was really strange that I never really wanted to get out of the subculture. I suppose I was living in London on site, running around London quite a lot.
Some of North London area as well.
Yeah, like Deptford, I like it all around there as well. Like it's all the Mutoid Waste crew and all up there. So London was quite different. Bristol, London. It's like you end up in a triangle, don't you? Brighton.
Yeah.
But
I was going to ask you how Brighton came to figure, but I guess that's later on in the story.
Yeah, for me, I used all the way through the 90s, and I got married at 18. My wife Michelle, we lived on the road together, and
Oh wow.
And she died in 2000 on New Year's Eve millennium on London Bridge. She had a massive aneurysm, a brain hemorrhage, and she collapsed and died. We were heavily into drugs at the time, and it was like
on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, 10 minutes into the new year.
Oh, wow.
It was quite strange because Michelle always believed in Nostradamus, and she believed the world was going to end in 1999. So we had a couple of grand bet on it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't believe it would. Yeah. And then 5 minutes into the new year, I was like, you owe me a couple of grand. And then another 5 minutes later, she was dead. So for her, the world did end in 1999. You know, she collapsed in my arms and died. And
God, that's awful.
I used it. It fueled me to carry on in addiction, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? I just went a bit more extreme. I remember saying to my friend, I said, where's the most dangerous place I can go to? And he said, Beirut. And I was like, I didn't have a passport at the time. I couldn't get out of the country. And for unknown reasons.
Which we won't talk about.
Yeah, which we won't talk about. But I said, where else is dangerous? He said, Bristol. He said, there's a drug war going on at the moment. They're shooting each other in the street. And I was like, let's go to Bristol.
Wow.
I mean, I had a bit of a strong death wish at the time.
Jeez.
I found out later on I suffer with survivor guilt, and I got a bit of PTSD as a result of it. I got complex PTSD, but from living a certain lifestyle for a very long time. But so I ended up in St. Paul's, just running around Bristol like a lunatic, using lots of heroin, using lots of crack. And then, I came to Brighton in 2001. I met a girl in Bristol from Brighton. I got myself shot down there. But,
oh, wow.
I ripped off some yardies, which wasn't a really good idea.
Shit. Oh, you like to pull a tiger's tail.
Yeah. And I'd been stabbed like 3 weeks before. I'd got stabbed quite badly. And then this happened. And she had a place down in Brighton. So she said, do you want to come down and stay down in Brighton? Come and get clean down in Brighton. So that was sort of the plan. So I came down here and I didn't really know what to make of Brighton. But my friend Mikey, who's still in Brighton now, still on the streets of Brighton, I knew him from Bristol. I knew him on site, and I bumped into Mikey down here, and I said, I don't really know about this town. And he said, there's like 1 million tourists a week here, Jay. It's like Christmas every day, he said. You never need to do without drugs here. And I was like, I'm staying. So I stayed, do you know, and I've been here ever since.
Jeez.
And, I don't know.
Because when I met you was 2013.
2013.
And you were living in the caravan on the racecourse,
yeah,
weren't you?
Yeah.
That was mad.
Yeah, just me on the side of the road, baby. Yeah. I'm quite secular, I like my own company.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because...
because I saw that and I thought I'd want to be in a group of caravans for protection.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't like politics with a big P or a small P, and site politics I find really difficult. So if I just police it myself, then it's okay. Do you know what I mean? So, that was a thing. And I don't know, I lived all over the place in Brighton. 2005, my daughter was born.
Wow. She's 18 now, isn't she?
She was born in 2005. My addiction was through the roof. I did a 10-day alcohol detox in Millview Hospital. I didn't mention drugs to them at all because I quite liked drugs at the time.
Yeah.
They were still working quite well for me.
So it's just the alcohol.
I didn't want to give them up. Yeah. And then I tried doing they took me to one 12-step meeting, and I remember after about 10 minutes in this meeting, I said to one of the people who was in the meeting, can you take me back to the little detox? And he was really kind. He took me back, and then the woman who was running the detox, this nurse, she said, what did you think, Jay? And I said, they're vague. All they did was talk about God.
Yeah.
And she said, they are very gaudy in the rooms on the 12-step program. And to be honest, the guy who was talking, he didn't really talk about God, but But he just kept saying this is a program of entire abstinence, which I thought sounded a bit strong, to be honest. Like, suicide didn't sound strong and homicide didn't sound that strong either, but entire abstinence did.
Yeah.
Because my experience of entire abstinence was usually when I'd been locked up, and it took me from homicidal to suicidal quite quickly. When I got nothing in my system, that's when my problems start, you know, and it's like, you know, like if drugs and alcohol are your problem, stop drinking and taking drugs and your problems go away, innit? But if drugs and alcohol are your solution, and you stop drinking and taking drugs, then you're in trouble pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And that was my experience of it. So I was determined not to do a 12-step program because of entire abstinence. So I did some drug and alcohol groups. And on the outside, my life looked all right. I ended up working for an events company. And on the outside, you know, this little
Keeping
family
up
unit going on.
appearances,
Yeah, but inside I was dying.
Wow.
Because when I drink and use, once I start, I can't stop. And when I stop, I can't stay stopped. So, you know, I didn't know anything about these things, like, so I didn't understand why. I just became good at, like, pretending that I was okay.
That must be a painful way to live.
Yeah, it's more painful than being flat
Self-loathing,
out.
I guess.
Yeah.
Feeling shit, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely more painful than using. I mean, like, without the solution. And then for me, my clean date is, I came back into, 7 years later, I came back into a 12-step fellowship on the 2nd of January 2012, and by then, entire abstinence seemed like the only solution.
Yeah.
Because I tried every other way of trying to
Mix and match and
manage the
stop this
unmanageable.
and stop that.
Yeah, it was horrendous. It just, I used to work for this events company, and we'd do an event, and then on a Sunday or the Monday when the event would finish, they'd all have a drink. And like, I'd have a couple of bottles of beer and be all over the place. And they used to all go, oh, he's such a lightweight. And it's because I was living on Valium and drinking vodka for breakfast.
Jesus.
You know what I mean? But like all undercover, like trying to pretend I was normal. So it was horrendous, really. So yeah, by the time I came in 7 years later, it seemed like the only solution. You know, and it's really bizarre because like I went to a 12-step meeting on 2nd of January 2012 with a horrendous heroin and crack habit. I couldn't stop injecting drugs on a daily basis, and I was living on benzos and ketamine and drinking alcoholically.
That ketamine back then?
Yeah, I was doing lots of ketamine. It's like, ketamine's been...
I thought it was a new thing.
Nah, we've been doing it since the mid-90s, probably earlier.
Wow.
So, I mean, but it's very different ketamine than it was about then. Yeah, I was really into it all, really. That was how I was sort of like, it was the currency of how I survived. And I went to a meeting, and a friend of mine, I had like my perfect New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. It was like the perfect storm. I had everything I wanted. So I was with a couple of women. There was plenty of booze. There was plenty of drugs. And I was crying in the toilet because the drugs wouldn't work. I was just injecting drugs and crying.
Shit.
And I had like, it was just like I know it to be a moment of clarity now, but it was just a realization that this was as good as he was ever going to get. It's like, this is the perfect storm. And I'm crying into the drugs. The drugs are definitely not working. It just wasn't. They were doing something.
That must be scary.
They wouldn't shut the noise off. They wouldn't shut my head off.
Yeah.
The fear was still all over me. Everything else was all that internal chat that was still going on. And that it had been like that for quite a while. But it was just that sort of realization. I reached out to a friend, and I blagged my way into a rehab. I claimed to be 30 days clean. But I was like using till 2 a.m. till I passed out. And I phoned my mate, and he took me to this rehab. And the manager said to me, oh, you know, fantastic, you know, you're 30 days clean today. And I said, no, I was using till 2 a.m. and I passed out at about 2 a.m. And he said, have you used anything today? And I said, no. He said, well, today's your clean day then. And I was like, okay. And I said, oh, I'll come back in 30 days. And he said, you might not live 30 days.
Wow.
You don't look like you're going to.
Yeah.
He said, come in and we'll test you in 5 days' time. So, yeah, I got taken to a meeting that night, and I was physically withdrawing. And there was a guy doing a chair, and he did talk about God. He talked about getting on his knees and praying. He kept saying about this is spiritual, not religious, and I didn't understand the difference.
What is the difference?
Well, for me, like, I think like religion is for people who are scared of going to hell, and spirituality is for people who've been there.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
Like,
That's
my take on it.
I like that.
Really. And,
yeah.
you know, it's not original. It's definitely not mine. It's something I heard. But I identify with that, you know, and it's like, I don't know, because I grew up in the South Wales Valleys, which is chapel and all that. So I was quite anti-religious. I got kicked out of Sunday school as a young kid.
Because it's drummed into you, isn't it?
Yeah,
Almost?
like I'm one of them ADHD kids, so I could never sit still anyway. Do you know what I mean? And they used to tell me I was going to go to hell in a handcart. And yeah, so it was like, So I was quite anti-religious. Being a punk is quite anti-religion, everything as well. And then, yeah, spirituality, I could sort of get my head around. But this geezer, he did a chair. He came out to me. I sat right in the front of the meeting because I was the last person to go in. And he said, this could be the luckiest day of your life. And I thought, this is anything but the luckiest day of my life. Like, I've been praying to die on a daily basis for a long time. And he also told me I'd never need to drink or use again a day at a time. And I remember thinking, I don't know if that's what I want. I'm tired. I just want to catch my breath, you know. And I just want the madness in my head to stop, really.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? My using was worse a year before than when I came in. It was extreme when I came in, but it had been worse a year before, you know. And he talked about getting on his knees in our meeting and praying. He kept looking at me and saying, you know, praying for a clean and sober day and praying for the obsession removed. And he kept looking at me all the time. And I went up to the end of the meeting and I thanked him for what he said, because I identified with some of the stuff he talked about. He was from quite a same sort of world. He'd been in and out of jails and different things. And I said, that's all well and good what you're talking about, but talking about getting on your knees and praying, but I don't believe in anything. And he said, it doesn't matter. Just do it anyway. You know, and I left that meeting and I knew I was going to use. I was physically withdrawing. I was never someone who could wait around on money. I go out and graft.
Graft means by any means.
Yeah, by any means necessary. I was like, I think I'd been locked up at a young age with a big drug problem. And back then in 87, 88, I got locked up. I had a big drug problem and a big methadone habit. And I went to prison, and in them days, they didn't really pander to addiction. So they gave me 2 paracetamol.
Jesus.
You know, and for 8 weeks, I've never been so ill.
Yeah.
Like, I was sick
Dangerous,
continuously.
isn't it?
Yeah, it was really bad in a really terrible way. But during that time, I sort of made the decision that I would never, ever be ill again. Wherever I had to do. Wherever I had to eat, wherever I had to do, I would never allow myself to be ill. And I lived like that for a very long time. So I was never someone who could wait around on something.
So never allowing yourself to be ill means you're maintaining your
never
your
physically
drug
withdraw
intake.
again.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
And wherever I go to, I'll get the money every day to make sure that I don't have to be ill again. Because it was cruel. You know, lots of people had lots of compensation for it years later. It was unusual and cruel treatment is what it was. You know, it was like, it's torture. Not supposed to do that to people.
Did you manage to keep your relationship going at this time with your young daughter? And...
No, it was like, for the first few years it did, but by 2012 it was just chaos, really. I'd been arrested with her coming out of a drug dealer's house. Do you know what I mean? It was like, ended up fighting with a couple of policemen in front of her. She was about 5 at the time. It wasn't cool. Yeah, and at that meeting, like, something happened, because, like, I walked back from her and I knew I was going to use.
Yeah.
And I got on my knees and I begged something I didn't believe in, just to help me through that night and to help me not to use that night and to take away the obsession to drink and use. And I haven't had a drink or drug since, and it'll be 12 years on Tuesday. Man. It'll be 12 years on Tuesday. I haven't stopped praying either. But it's spiritual, not religious. You know, for me, it's a God of my understanding. Like.
So is that like a higher power?
Yeah, like a higher power. It's just higher powers. It's longer to say, innit? God's a G-O-D. I like G-O-D because of the great outdoors.
Oh, yeah.
G-O-D, and it's dog spelled backwards. I mean, my name's been Jamie Dog since I was a kid, so, do you know what I mean? It's like, I like that, you know, it's, you know, there's an old fella who helped me a lot, and he's sort of my spiritual advisor. His name's Charlie, and I'll just say his first name because his name's Charlie. I don't really name people, but he's the one who told me about, like, religion and spirituality, and he told me lots of different things. You know what I mean? He really helped me, and he was from the same sort of world as me, and he grew up in the same sort of family, and he explained to me that it was all fear. You know, he really helped me with that stuff. But it was really bizarre because like, I didn't believe in God, but I blame God for everything that happened in the world, like God caused all the wars. You know what I mean? I found out later that was men did that in the name of God. It was quite a difference.
It's a bit of a difference.
But I was like, God created all, you know. And considering I didn't believe in God, I blamed God for everything bad that happened in my life. Do you know what I mean? It's really quite strange. I was like, you know, because I didn't believe in nothing, but it was definitely God's fault. Do you know what I mean? If there was a God, he was a punishing God, and he was punishing me. So that was sort of, you know, based on my views of religion, and, you know, and spirituality for me has been very different. You know, like I said, the G-O-D, the great outdoors. I like nature. I like the universe.
Yeah.
It's definitely a power greater than myself. Trees don't seem to have any problem being trees.
Yeah.
Jamie has a real problem being Jamie. You know what I mean? So, yeah, they don't seem to have a problem. I do. So, yeah, it was for me, it was just about that connection.
And I suppose the opposite of fear is faith, isn't it?
Yeah.
Faith in something.
Faith in something,
You
yeah.
know?
I was out of options, really.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's really strange because, like, I didn't really want to do a 12-step program. I didn't like the sound of those 12 steps. And I didn't know what a fearless and thorough moral inventory was, but I didn't like the sound of it. And I definitely didn't like the sound of making amends to people, going and saying sorry.
Those are all the things that
all the things I definitely
people
didn't want
don't
to do.
want to do. Yeah.
And I didn't really like the idea of admitting I was powerless. You know, my life was unmanageable, which was the step one stuff. But, you know...
Was that hard for you to come to terms with that?
Well, I think, you know, because Charlie, he broke things down in a way that I could understand, you know. So he said to me, I said, listen, I don't really think I'm an alcoholic and I don't think I'm a drug addict, yeah? I'm more of a binge drinker and a binge user. Like, admittedly, some of my binges lasted 10 years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I binged the 90s.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They say if you can remember it, he wasn't there. I have no idea. People come up to me and talk to me about stuff we've done. I have no idea at all. Do you know what I mean? And it's like... And they have big stories about me and I can't remember anything. Wow. But, yeah, it was like... I don't know, I was trying to think what you said. But no, so Charlie, he just broke it down to me in ways I could explain. And so I said, I don't really think I'm one of us. And he said, okay. He said, no, you know when you drink, he said, oh, use, Jay. He said, once you start, can you stop? He said, do you get a taste for it? And to be honest with me, the more I drink, the thirstier I get. And the more drugs I use, the more drugs I want. You know, and I said, no, once I'm on it, I'm on it. It's game on, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And he was like, okay, so when you start, you don't know when you're going to stop. You can't guarantee how much you're going to do. And, yeah. And I was like, yeah, no, okay, cool. Yeah, I can accept that. And he said, okay, so when you're drinking and using like that, can you guarantee your safety? Do you know where you're going to end up? Do you know what's going to happen? And I was like, nah. You know, if I'm lucky, I end up in strange beds. If I'm unlucky, I end up in police stations, in paper suits or in hedges. And I can't guarantee my own safety. I don't know what's going to happen.
Jesus, yeah.
You know, because I drink and used to blackout. So he's like, okay, cool. And he said, and when you're drinking and using like that, can you guarantee anyone else's safety? Are you safe to be around? And I'm like, no, I'm not. You know, I can switch when I drink and use. I get violent and whatever. And then I said to him, yeah, but I'm not always violent. And he went, do you get behind the wheel of a car when you're like that? And I was like, oh, fuck's sake. So I mean, and he went, so you're a danger to yourself and a danger to others, yeah? And when you start, you can't stop. And when you stop, you can't stay stopped. Yeah, and I went, yeah. He went, that's probably a few good reasons just to sit and have a listen in these meetings. So I was like, so I was sort of there under duress. I didn't have, because no one said I had to stay.
Yeah.
It was all like, if you don't want to stay, you don't have to. And I listened. You know, people told me to listen for the similarities, no differences. And I heard other people, like I thought I was the only person who thought and felt like I did. And I thought if I told other people how I was thinking and feeling, they'd lock me up forever. And then I ended up with a room full of people that thought and felt like I did and openly talked about that stuff. And openly talked about fear. And I was just like, I don't really identify with that stuff, but I did. In my heart, I did. Yeah. So, you know, it was like, I was sold on the idea, really. But, yeah, for a month and a half, all I did was pray a lot. I got kicked out of the treatment centre quite quickly because of my behaviour. Because I didn't have a program. I wasn't using.
Just praying.
Yeah, just praying and not using. And
yeah. I can imagine that's quite an uncomfortable place to be.
Well, after a month and a half, I became as dangerous without a drink and a drug as I am with one. I became stark raving sober. You know, and I spoke to a guy outside the meeting, and he said, I used to have a seat either side of me empty because I used to growl at people all the time in the meetings. I used to shout a lot. Do you know what I mean? And I spoke to a fellow outside the meeting, and people had asked me how I was, and I go, yeah, I'm fantastic. Everything's really good, which is like a polite way of saying leave me alone, isn't it? And I just got honest with the guy. I said, this is, and that guy was Charlie. I said, this is worse than it's ever been. I said, I feel more like killing myself in the last month and a half than I ever have. You know, it's like recovery is really, really shit. I feel worse than ever. And he said, I think you need a 12-step program as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, well, I don't think so. I said, because I'm not an alcoholic. You know, I'm a drug addict. And he said, well, I think you're suffering with alcoholism. And I was like, but I can't be because I'm not an alcoholic. And he said, well, alcoholism don't have a lot to do with booze and drugs, Jay. Those are just two of the solutions you've used to try and treat it. He said, if you're like me, you've probably used sex, food, other people. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've used all of them things to try and, you know.
Try and fill that hole.
Yeah, try and fill that hole. And, you know, he explained to me.
Pardon the pun.
He explained to me what I suffered with alcoholism. He explained what he suffered with. He told me what he suffered. He didn't tell me what I suffered with. He told me what he suffered with. And, he kept saying about it being a fear-based illness. And I had quite a strange experience with him, really, because he asked me, could he take me for a cup of tea? Because he told me, I think you need the program. And I said, I'm doing the program. And he said, you're just not drinking and using and going to meetings? I said, but that's what people are saying I got to do. And he said, maybe that's what they need to do. Maybe they're not suffering from alcoholism, but if you're suffering like I suffer, then you need this program. And he asked me, could he take me for a cup of tea? He took me for a cup of tea, and he told me some stuff about himself and how he felt when he was young. And I identified with lots he talked about. And he asked me some questions that are on page 52 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll name the book because it's a really cool book. They're called the Bedevilments in there. That sounds quite sexy to me because I grew up with Tales of the Unexpected.
Yeah.
So the Bedevilment sounds like quite groovy.
Yeah.
It wasn't groovy at all. But he asked me as a series of questions, and I didn't know it was at the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous because he didn't have the book with him and he knew the stuff off by heart. But he said, we were having trouble with personal relationships. Were you having trouble with personal relationships, Jay? And I said, I've had trouble with personal relationships since I was a kid. Like I couldn't get on with my family and my parents, never mind outside the house. I've always had trouble with personal relationships. He said, okay, cool. And he said, were you prey to misery and depression? I said, I always have been, I am now. He said, okay, cool. He said, did you have a feeling of uselessness? Yeah, I've always felt like that, and I still got it now. He said, okay, cool. He said, were you unhappy? It's like, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always been unhappy. Quite morose, I make Morrissey seem happy half the time, do you know what I mean? And he said, can you make a living? I thought, I got him now. I said, no, fucking right. Yeah, I can make a living. He said, no, I didn't say, can you graft money, Jay? I said, can you make a living? Do you have a life as a result of the money you earn? And I'm like, I can't make a living. All my money goes on booze and drugs. He said, okay. And he said, were you full of fear? And I said, no, definitely not. And he went, well, I said, I don't fear anything that breathes. If it bleeds, I can kill it. I ain't scared of any man. I said, I wasn't even scared of my dad, and my dad was quite a dangerous man. I said, I've never been scared of anything. And he said, I can see it all over you like a cheap suit. And he was like in his 60s at the time, and I was like early 40s, and I can have a row. And I said to him, you are. I got really angry with him. He went, I can see it all over you like a cheap suit. And I went, fucking, you are. And he went, if you think rolling around on the floor is going to make you feel better, we can do that, and then we'll have another cup of tea. Yeah. And I'm like, listen, mate, I don't know what you're talking about. Because he really it jarred me. I said, I don't understand what you're talking about with fear. He said, no, as a kid. I said, yeah. He said, do you ever enjoy a kid's party? I went, what? He went, did you ever enjoy a kid's party? Or was you desperately kid what everybody else thought of you? I went, fucking hell, man. Yeah, no, I've always been, like I go to a kid's party as a kid, be like, do I look all right? Are these trainers all right? Oh, right. I was like, the internal dialogue I had continuous. I said, no, I always felt like that. He said, what about in your family? I said, well, on a good day, with the wind behind me, I used to look at them all and think, I think I've been adopted. Because they could all connect with each other and I just couldn't. And on a bad day, I used to think I was an alien. I just used to feel like I'd been beamed down. So I loved getting lost in fantasy. I loved eating Brighton books. I liked anything that took me out of myself. That's why I like solvents at 10 or 11, started sniffing glue. I loved anything that changed the way I feel. Anything got me out of my head. And he went, all of that's fear, Jay. And I was like, why? He went, no, you don't feel comfortable in your own skin. Fear what people think of you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been consumed with that all my life. Before I ever took a drink and a drug, I was consumed with fear. And I just didn't have the words to say it. And booze and drugs helped me to manage that. Until they got to a point where they stopped working and I still had the fear whether I was drinking or using or not, And when he explained that to me, he said, that's what the 12-step program is designed to treat, Jay. Untreated alcoholism, third-party illness, not the physical allergy, the obsession of the mind. This is where you're left with when you stop drinking and using. That's what I said in the beginning, if booze and drugs are your problem, if you stop drinking and using, then your problems will go away. And that's really cool.
So simple, isn't it?
Yeah, but if booze and drugs are your solution, and you stop drinking and using, you're in trouble really quickly. And that's why I need a program for. That's why I need a 12-step program. 12 steps enable me to change, really. It's like, it's designed to do that, It's designed to connect me to something. Because I always felt disconnected. And when I took drugs and alcohol, they made me feel connected. Yeah. And then they stopped making me feel, it's like, drugs and alcohol, they give me wings, but then they took away the sky. Right. So it's like, to start with, they made me fly, and it was like I was connected, and then suddenly I'd be in a field with 3,000 people taking ecstasy, feeling desperately alone. And there was people there who loved me, but I just couldn't connect
Couldn't
with them.
feel it.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, this is the tribe I found connection in, really, in recovery, really. So it's like, yeah, steps changed my life.
So how does that work with obviously being in a band, doing so many shows, and life on the road?
Yeah.
There's a lot of accompaniments, wine, women, and song.
Yeah,
drugs.
very much. Well, I'm the only one who's clean and sober in the band.
Wow.
I mean, I think we do about 20 odd festivals a year, and
very busy.
and a few of my band members, they drink and take drugs like an extreme sport. They really try their best.
Yeah.
Fair play to them. like a suicide mission.
Yeah. And that must be hard being up front, being the vocalist, with the timings.
I drink a lot of tea. I do a lot of praying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love it. I really love it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I never thought any of that would be possible. So like I stopped, I've always written, and I started, when I got clean and sober, I started writing again. I went to my friend Martin. He's a drummer of Los Albertos, and I don't know if you know Los Albertos. They're quite a big band, a big festival band, and they like to party. And I was like 5 months clean and sober, and Martin invited me on tour with them.
Whoa!
And
Jeez.
yeah, it was one of the mentalest tours ever. But I think it was the second festival, and Mark, the guitarist, they got me up on stage with them, and I was basically like a Welsh Bez, really. So I mean, dancing about a bit, did a bit of backing vocals up there, had a laugh. And the thing was, is I got to see that I could get on stage without the drink and a drug in me, because I thought the only way you could do that is under the influence. Do you know what I mean? And the buzz of it was amazing.
It's a really good buzz.
It was a real amazing buzz.
Yeah.
And that tour was a crazy tour. And then we was at Boomtown, and it was quite. Everyone was taking drugs quite extremely. It was quite extreme. And I was drinking a lot of tea, and I ended up going on wandering around, and I saw, I was like, I spoke to loads of other musicians, and it was like, there's lots of cable, but I ended up sat around a fire.
Yeah.
There was a guy there, and his name was Rob the Rub, and he was all into the Peace Not War movement. Rob had a really big album, Rob the Rub. People knew him, like he was a very political Rob. And he was sat there with a guitar, and I just said to him, like, because I was just observing stuff, and I said to him, Ketamine killed the party, Ketamine killed the rave, Ketamine created dubstep, Skrillex, because it was dubstep playing everywhere.
It was big, wasn't it?
And he went, whose lyrics are they? And I was like, well, they're mine. I just wrote them. And he was like, do them again. So he played like a punk ska riff on the guitar, and I did them, and then Ketamine killed the party became a song. We formed a band. So that's the
first track you did?
Yeah, that's the band that we just formed this band on the back of me being disgruntled with trying to find musicians to play with. Everyone was like taking lots of drugs, talking about drugs. Because when people take drugs, they talk a lot about drugs, don't they? Do you know what I mean? So they go, this isn't as good as the drugs we had last week, or this isn't as good as the drugs we had. It's like, it's quite boring when you're drinking tea.
Yeah.
When you're taking drugs, it's quite all right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I used to be in lots of random kitchens taking drugs and talking about drugs. So it was like, and it wasn't being judgmental of him. It's just like I really couldn't connect because I was trying to live differently, and I just wanted someone to play guitar because I had loads of words coming around in my head.
Yeah.
And Rob was a real good vehicle for. So that's sort of where the band got formed.
So he's one of the founding members, is he?
He was, yeah. Rob hasn't been in a band for a few years now. Yeah, so like, he still does his solo stuff, and Rob's like really big on the thing. But we had a lot of fun. It was really bizarre because we ended up playing at lots of festivals, and it was really cool. Like,
well, you got quite. I mean, I've been to a few festivals with you, and your fans are dedicated. They follow you around.
Yeah, they do love us.
Yeah. Well, because you're part of them when you're on stage and performing. You're not like a band that's miles away. You get involved, don't you?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that's great.
I sort of like. I think. Because I write political stuff, but I like to have a sense of humour as well, and so I'm quite anti the system, anti-police, whatever. But my philosophy is, if I can make 100 people dance, and one person stops and goes, "Did he just say that?"
Yeah.
Then I know I've done my job.
Wicked.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's like hearts and minds, isn't it?
I like Obama.
Oh yeah. But we've stopped playing it. We stopped playing Hope Obama. Rob
Give me Hope Obama. That's it.
Yeah. Because we played it it was an anti-Trump demonstration thing in London, and some Italian anti-fascists, I found that it doesn't translate that well.
Right, gotcha.
Do you know what I mean? Because irony doesn't really translate.
No.
So, like, the first line is, you can call me a racist, but I just like the guy because he's black. I'm talking about Obama, I'm talking about Barack, which is just a throwaway line. But, like, this Italian fascist, anti-fascist, she thought it was a racist line.
Oh,
and the second line is, you can call me homophobic, but Tony Blair was fucking gay. He had his nose shoved up George Bush's arse in a most undignified way. So it's just throwaway lines.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It wasn't meant to be homophobic, and it definitely wasn't meant to be racist, but it just didn't translate. So we stopped playing it, really.
Yeah. Yes.
Rob still plays it. But,
Classic.
bless him, but he likes controversy. But yeah, no, it's like, it was just some throwaway lines that people take to heart.
You had some good lockdown ones as well. Because I noticed in lockdown the lyrics started coming out on Facebook. Some good stuff there.
Yeah, no, I've been writing loads. Like I do write a lot. Like at the moment we're trying to get an album finished. We've done half the album. We ran out of money, which is really funny. Someone funded us some money and we recorded 7 tracks at Medway Studio, which is the home of the Levelers. So it was really cool to do something at their studio, which is a really nice studio. But we did sort of 7 tracks. But we did Sunny Lockdown Days.
Yeah, I've seen the video for that.
We filmed there on top of a squat in town in Churchill Square, on top of the Esprit building. Some youngsters had squatted the building and we were all about squatting. So we was just giving a bit of support. And they let us film on the roof. Yeah, that was funny. But you can't really get airplay with it.
No.
It sort of questions the narrative.
Yeah.
I don't know anything. I don't
it's
think
underground, isn't it?
People don't like the narrative being questioned, do they?
It's not going to be on Radio 1, I don't think.
No, they won't.
Unless they ban it, then you'll have it here.
Yeah, well, I got a friend who he does stuff for like Radio 6 and Radio Wales, and I sent him the track. He played a couple of other songs that got quite a bit of swearing in, and he got told off about it, and so then I ended up sending him Sunny Lockdown Days, and he sent me one back saying, like, I absolutely love it, but I can't play it. And I said, oh, well, just cut the swearing out at the end. Just, all the shout-outs, what I swear on, just cut them out. And he said, oh, it's not that, it's the content. So his manager said, like, because it's like Sunny Lockdown Days, and it sort of questions, the government's figures and all of that. So he couldn't play because of the content.
Yeah, I can never see you sitting down and writing a pop hit on purpose.
Yeah, I think I'd love to write one and Peter Andre could sing it and then I'd be a millionaire and I would never have to work again and live on a beach.
Yeah.
That would be really cool. Peter, if you're listening, I got a pop song for you. I can do them without swearing.
So what's it like now kind of touring with the band? I mean, obviously if they're still enjoying themselves and trying to keep everyone together, get to shows. I mean, even just getting to a festival on time, I can imagine is like herding
It's like
cats.
trying to herd cats. It really is, like my drummer Freddie, I got to give you a big shout, Freddie. I love you dearly. Like, he is a machine, and to call him a drummer is like an understatement because he's one of them multi-talented musicians that can play every instrument.
Yeah.
He can work a desk. Do you know what I mean? He can produce. He can do a lot of stuff, and he's really talented. But he's just a lunatic. I love him to bits, but I've had to tape drumsticks into his hand before now because he's been quite messy. I taped him to a drum stool at one festival because he kept sliding off it. But and then when we start, he's like a machine. So he's like, so for me, it's like I've become this designated adult. It's really hard work because I've been like this child. Like the first 40 years of childhood was the hardest for me, definitely. Do you know what I mean? And now it's like the universe has punished me and made me the designated adult. So I have to be a grown-up and try and make the band work together. Like, and like Bogsy, my sax player, he's in New Zealand at the moment. He's just a really talented, so they party, but they don't. Like Ian, my guitarist, Crystal Ian, he lives in Tipi Valley. They party, but they're not to the extreme like I was. So booze and drugs sort of work for them. They have a good time with them. And when I take drinking drugs, I don't have a good time.
Yeah.
It's like they go to festivals and have fun. When I was taking drugs, I go to festivals and spend a weekend in a caravan smoking crack. Everybody goes, what do you think of that band? It's like, I have no idea. I
was in there with this random.
I was just in someone's caravan washing up cocaine. It's very different for them. So I suppose it enables me to, the 12-step program, the stuff that I do really enables me to go anywhere and do anything that free men do. As long as I'm in a fit physical condition, I'm cool. I've heard people have said to me, don't you think you're putting yourself at risk going to Glastonbury and Boomtown and places like that? And to be honest, if I'm not in a fit spiritual condition, I'm not safe on St. James Street or Western Road. I don't need you lot or anybody else to encourage me to do drugs. I have a mind that does that. That's why I need a program, really. So it's like, as a result of the program, I'm free.
Do you find if you've got a busy week of festivals or month of festivals, you have to work harder on your program, whatever that is?
Well, I take my program everywhere with me, so it's quite portable.
Yeah.
And for me, I do a little bit of meditation, I do a bit of connection, I do a few little readings, I connect with a few people, I do that every day. I have an illness that don't take a day off, so I don't take a day off. So I do that every day, and as a result of that, I'm safe and protected. The problem's removed, like.
Wow.
But it's like, for a day, you get a daily reprieve, contingent on what I do on a daily basis.
And then I guess you try and give it away, what you've learned on the road.
I try and help others, It's like, people are always curious. I have people always come up to me when I'm at festivals or whatever, especially people who knew me before and know me now, and I'm very different to the man I used to be before. Yeah. They usually start telling me that they got a friend who got a problem with drugs or they're not as bad as me. People always go, I wasn't never as bad as you. And I'm like, yeah, cool. And then we start talking about what I do. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you try and carry a message of hope and use words if you got to, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, especially if people knew you before and they know you now. I used to be a nightmare. I was a real nightmare. It wasn't fun to be around. I was very unpredictable, very volatile, very, because I was in a place of pain on a daily. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't like it was fun. The fun had stopped a long time before I stopped.
Yeah. And what's it like now then? Now, your life in recovery, or, now you've kind of got a good understanding of what your problem was and how, how do you live your life now? How do you keep yourself, what's family life like? Yeah.
I've never been so poor, but I've never been so happy.
Wow.
So, like, I don't do anything criminal anymore, which is, like, a very different way to live for me. And that's really cool. Like, so, it's like I said, like I said in the beginning, I'd been arrested with my daughter coming out to a drug dealer's house. I was like, then when my daughter was 8 or 9, I ended up through a process of courts and everything, ended up with sole custody of her.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, So,
what a turnaround.
Aye.
Because you'd have to convince them of your sobriety.
I spent a year talking to social workers, and it was really bizarre because, like, the first few times I met up with a social worker, she kept asking me the same. It was her and a manager, and she kept asking me the same questions, but she kept asking me in a different way. And I said to her, "You're really going to struggle to catch me out because I'm just going to tell you the truth." I said, "That's all I got is the truth." And she was like, "Oh, okay." She didn't really quite know what to make of me. And then the fourth time that she came to see me, I couldn't see him. She had my long, boring criminal record in front of her. And she was flicking through it and she said, "Jamie, do you think the police are picking on you?" And I said, "No, I don't." I said, "I was a criminal and their job is to catch criminals." And she said, "Oh, okay." And she looked quite shocked. And then she kept flicking through the papers. And she said, "But you seem to have stopped committing serious crimes, but you still got arrested on like a really regular basis." And I said, "Well, the police's other job is to deal with antisocial behaviour. And when I drink and take drugs, I'm very antisocial." And she said, "I'm not really used to dealing with this level of honesty." And I said, "Neither am I."
Yeah.
It was revealed to me through step 5 of a 12-step program. She went, "What?" So I ended up telling her about like the program, basically. And I explained to her, like, up until then, I believed they picked on me because of who I was and the way I lived. And, and I got to see the truth through the program, that there was a common denominator in all of my arrests and all, and that was me. I was the problem. It wasn't really them. They were just doing what they do. Whether I like them or not is irrelevant. Whether I like what they stand for is irrelevant. You know what I mean? It's quite telling that I've been in recovery 12 years and I haven't been arrested for 12 years. I haven't had any problems with the police for 12 years. That sort of tells me that I was the problem. Do you know what I mean? And it's like,
jeez. So
I spent 2 hours with her talking about a 12-step program. And I told her about step 9. I told her about making amends with my mother and crying in my mother's kitchen. Do you know what I mean? Because like, it's been a real, like, recovery, like addiction's a family illness. And when I'm in addiction, my family suffer with it too. But recovery's the same. It's just a bit slower for them. They recover as well, I told the social worker about when I made amends with my mother. So I was in my mother's kitchen because she wouldn't sit still. So I ended up having to wash dishes with her. So I was trying to make amends with her. And I said, I was telling her, how sorry I was. And she just stopped me and she said, "You know what, Jay?" And I said, "What?" She said, "When my phone rings?" I went, "Yeah." She said, "I ain't scared to answer it. I don't think it's someone telling me that you're dead or you killed someone, yeah?" She said, "No, when I see a police car, I don't panic anymore, Jay." I don't think they come into the house to tell me that you've done something or you're dead, yeah? She said, and I can answer, if anybody knocks the door, I can answer my door, yeah? And I was like, fuck. She said, no, when I go to bed. I went, yeah. She said, I sleep at night. And so I burst into tears because it just really affected me. Because all my life, I didn't speak to her for years. From when I was a kid, she used to say, every time my phone rings, I think it's to say I'm dead. Every time there's a knock on our door, and I go, oh, shut up, ma'am. Leave me alone, please. Do you know what I mean? Because I thought the only person I was hurting was me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it was like, you know, but just hearing that she didn't live like that anymore. And I ended up telling the social worker about it, and she got a bit emotional, I got a bit emotional.
Wow.
And I just built up a relationship with them. They got to see that I was there about my daughter. I was like, this is about my daughter. This isn't about anything else. Do you know what I mean? This is just about my daughter. And so, it was a year of going to these family things. And then we went to court, and a judge, she recommended to a judge, I guess, sole custody, and the judge agreed.
Wow.
You know, and
that's amazing.
yeah, it's been a beautiful experience.
And that's amazing, because that's like trying to move a mountain, because they've got preconceived ideas, drug addicts. And you weren't covering that up or hiding it. You're being open and honest, and I'm in recovery, and that's fantastic.
It was really strange, you know, because for the world I'm from, you know, and I grew up in a criminal for a long time. I grew up in all that, you know, is like very different from, you know, and you know, like when you met me, like I was living in a caravan up on a racecourse, you know, on Army of One. But like with social workers, you know, I had to just change. It was really, you know, like they was an anti-traveller, they said, but. They thought it'd be better if I was living in a flat. You know what I mean? And I get that. They have a lot of preconceived ideas too, you know. I don't agree with their preconceived ideas because, you know, I know a lot of families live on the road, you know, and they live in a good way. So it was like, but yeah, I don't know, I jumped through all the hoops really because it was about my daughter. It was about keeping my daughter safe, and it was about, you know, being a dad to her. And I learned all that through the program. You know, like I desperately wanted to be a good dad.
Being a dad's great, isn't it?
Yeah, but I didn't really have the ability to do it. I thought being present was turning up with presents. You know what I mean? It was like, I desperately wanted to be a good son. But my addiction was more powerful than any of that. It's like I love my little girl more than anything in the world. My daughter's name is Sissy, and I've never loved anything like I love her. And I remember holding her. She was a few hours old, and she looked exactly like my dad. I remember bursting into tears. She looked exactly like my old man. It was really weird. And like I love her more than anything in the world, and I would stand in front of a bus for her and I would shoot a man dead for her. But I could not stop using drugs for her. I would step over her to use drugs. I would take her with me to get drugs. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, and it was in a 12-step fellowship in the rooms with that I heard other parents. Like I grew up around violence, and I'm quite desensitized to a lot of that. The stuff that I've done, I feel guilt over it, but I'm quite desensitized. But the stuff I felt real guilt, shame, and remorse about is that. Like I love my little girl more than anything in the world, but I couldn't stop using for her. You know, and it was in the rooms that I heard other mothers and fathers tell me how much they love their kids, but they couldn't stop using for them. Yeah. You know, I found out lack of love isn't my problem, lack of power is my problem. You know, and I need to connect to a power. So,
and that power you get from your higher power.
From my higher power, yes, from my daily routine that I connect to. You know, so it's like my daughter's taught me so much about being like being a human, really. You know, like because like I said, I'm quite desensitized and. You know, it's being a dad is really cool, and like she taught me so much about that stuff. Really, like she's 18 now. She's got a little girlfriend, Amelie. They've been together a couple of years. I feed 2 teenagers instead of 1, and it's really cool. Do you know what I mean? My partner Kate, she's a little angel. She's a civilian, which is why I call people that are not addicts. she's like a normal person. Yeah, my family life is like, I don't know. My values are very different now. You know, I'm still political and I still write what I write, and I'm always writing. As you know, I always put lyrics up. And
good lyrics as well.
Yeah, I'm still really anti-government. I'm still really anti a lot of things. Still really anti-injustice. So, I don't think I could do I don't think I could even. I was thinking about this on the way. I was thinking, do I mention Gaza or do I not? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, because, you know, it's like.
Well, you can talk about anything. It's my show.
You know, it's like injustice anyway is injustice. Do you know what I mean? And like, you know, like words are thrown like genocide and all that are thrown about at the moment, but like, you know, systematic ethnic cleansing,
it's
whatever.
Shocking,
it's really bad.
I can't watch the news anymore.
It's really bad.
Can't watch it.
Yeah.
Because I just want to punch something.
Yeah. Well, I stopped watching the news and social media for periods of time, and then I can't write nothing. So I put the news on for 10 minutes, and I suddenly write loads of lyrics. So the antagonist, it makes me write because it's like, because I feel quite helpless around our stuff. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, So the only thing I can do is write. And like I said, if I can make 100 people dance and one person say, "Did he just say that?" Then I did my job. You know,
achieved your goal.
Yeah, because I've been writing a lot around what's going on at the moment, and it's tragic. It's really tragic, you know. But I don't know. I don't know. Like I was more like I like the direct action stuff always, and you know, I sort of think if voting made a difference, they'd have made it illegal by now.
Yeah, true.
Same as protesting. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? They allow. You know, like there was.
That's shocking.
There was like over 1 million people. Do you remember Peace Not War? There was over 1 million people out on the street, and Tony Blair bombed Iraq at the end of the week. Do you know what I mean? They really don't care. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, I suppose I got friends, shall we say, the black bloc sort of direct action stuff, and they got a really bad name, you know, like, you know, anti-fascists, they got a really bad name now, you know, all the stuff that goes on, really. But, like, let's be honest, the only thing that ever changes anything is, like, you know, Velvet Revolutions, really, innit? It's like, you know, it
needs something to...
Yeah, because they don't care. They literally don't care. Like, you know, you get to see all the collusion that's involved in this, and all the people that's involved in, you know, war's big business, isn't it? It's a growth industry. Do you know what I mean? You know, I think it's like 27 experts in the world, and Britain and America are arming most of them, let's be honest. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, that's the truth of it, and it's like, it's big business, and like, I've been to a few different protests, I've been out on site, you know, out on, you know, different things that's going on, but peaceful protest, unfortunately, doesn't really... It's
like a fart in a bucket, isn't it? It doesn't make any difference.
But like, but a lot of us are scared to go out there and protest. You know, you see what happened with the Kill the Bill stuff now. People getting 10 years. I mean, you can get 10 years for attacking a statue now.
Or even
which
from
is quite
saying,
cool,
what was it? From the, I won't say it, from the lands to the sea, one day Palestine will be free. You can get locked up for that.
Yeah,
I didn't say that, I would just mean theoretically.
Yeah, that's like hate speech now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like,
really?
That's really extreme, isn't it?
That's getting, but people like, don't realise how extreme it's getting.
You know, like I'm a product of the criminal justice bill. You know, I remember that happened in '94, and the riots had happened, and you know, that was music of repetitive beat, and that was like Free Party Crew and all of that. You know, this new criminal justice bill that they just brought in, it makes that one seem quite tame. Do you know what I mean? Like the amount of laws that came in during lockdown and all that stuff, the amount of things they took off people is unreal. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
and they haven't put them back. Have you noticed that? They take the rights away.
It was never coming back, was they?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like...
Well, I think, unfortunately, we're on the dawn of a dark age that's coming. Don't want to be all negative.
No.
But, you know, there's this facial recognition system now that MI5 have been talking about, and there's been snippets about it, that if you're wanted, they could track you down in any town, and anywhere in the UK or probably Europe. Yeah. They'll say, oh, he's just walked down the high street in, Shepperton.
Yeah.
You know, and if we move to a digital currency, which is like the rule, then they will have ultimate control on you.
Yeah.
They'll know what you're buying, what you're spending, and if in their bad books, they can just turn your bank off.
Cash is king, baby.
Do you know what I mean? You know, we don't realise it.
Metal and cash.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're better off buying gold at the moment, isn't it? It's crazy. It's really crazy times, you know. It's like my daughter, like she's 18, you know, and she did 2 years of her education basically locked down, didn't they? They didn't go to college anymore, do you know what I mean? And it's like, they missed out on such a massive chunk of madness, really, do you know what I mean? Because all of that, you know, like when I think back to the days we went through, like I'd left, by 15 I was out on the road, and I'd left school and I was up to no good. But, you know, I really feel like they missed out, you know, like the fear factor, do you know what I mean? The fear that they ramped them up with, you know, it was like... You know, and it's like, like there was a spark, you know, being like a child of Thatcher's Britain. Do you know what I mean? Like we were anti everything, and we took it to them a bit. You know, you have the Tax Riots, criminal justice bill, and young people would go out on the streets and get involved,
take action.
And now they don't seem to have it, and it's like, you know, and they allow peaceful. There was like 1 million people in marching through London about Gaza, and that's like. The BBC don't really show anything, really. It's like, you know, the media's controlled by
very controlled, you know.
And no one's, you know, not that I'm condoning smashing things or setting fire.
No.
Yeah, we got a song called Peace Riot, don't we?
Peace Riot.
Peace Riot. Yeah, you know. And it's
when
I say peace, you say riot.
Peace.
Yeah. You know,
and it always gets everyone going.
It gets them going and down. And I say at the beginning and the end of that song, this is just a song. I'm not trying to incite anybody to do anything. But if you are going to do it, we'll meet you at Euston Station. We're up for it.
You still got it in you, ain't you?
Of course.
You still got that streak in you, man.
Yeah, well, you know, the day of the revolution, when the revolution does come, do you know what I mean? Which, you know, I imagine that it will. Eventually, something will give.
Yeah.
You know, I know which way I'm going. And it's like, yeah, you know, it's like...
Wow. And so you put a lot of time into your recovery now when you're not on the road, yeah?
Yeah.
And how does that work at home? You know, because your missus must have to put up with you being away quite a bit, or you know, going out for meetings and.
Yeah, well, I don't know. If I put my recovery first and try and fit my life around it, it's manageable. But if I try and do life and fit recovery around it, I'll become unravelled really quickly. So she knows that. She never knew me when I was drinking and using. She's only ever known me in recovery, and I'm quite honest with her that my recovery has to come first. You know, and because without my recovery, then nothing really matters. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I sort of think like, you know, I should have been dead a lot of times. You know, a lot of things happened to me over the years. You know, so like the last 12 years are like, you know, they borrowed time, and it's really cool. It's like a real blessing. So I try and make the most of it. Yeah, so I have to put my recovery first. Yeah, you know, and it's cool. Well, I don't mind that. You know, it's like the geezer who helped me, the first man who sponsored me, and he took me through a 12-step program. He said to me, "Are you prepared to go to any lengths, Jay?" First time we met up, he sat there with his book open, and I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Do you know what that means?" And I said, "I haven't got a clue. I would literally say yes to anything at the moment because I'm in a lot of pain." And he said, "Okay." He said, "I'm only going to suggest a few things. I'm not going to ask you to do anything I didn't do." And I went, "Okay, I'm cool with that." And he went, "But there's one deal, yeah." And I was like, "Oh, fuck!" And I knew there was going to be a deal. I said, "Okay, what's the deal?" And he said, "If I take you through these 12 steps, you'll do it for the next man." And I said, "Oh, I don't know if I can do that." And he just closed the book. Wow. And I went, "Okay, I'll do it. And he opened the book back up, and I'm really glad I did the deal. Because, you know, for me, the whole program is about cleaning house, like getting rid of all the stuff that blocked me up. Trusting in my higher power and helping others. That's what it's all about, really. That's
just keeping it going.
Keeping it that simple. Yeah. It really is that simple. Recovery is not complicated. It's simple.
People probably make it
I'm complicated, of course, man.
It's a simple program for
complicated people, so they say, yeah. I think it's a simple program for stubborn people as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's like massive ego and low self-esteem.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming and sharing some time with me, having a chat, and just having a, you know. Yeah.
No, thanks for asking me, Mark. Yeah. I don't know if I've said anything out. I think I've been quite guarded.
No, but that's quite good.
Yeah, that's
obviously there's a lot of interesting stories and stuff which we don't need to go down that route. But...
Yeah, well, I'd have to change the names to protect the guilty, to be honest. You know, it's like quite a lot of people I did things with, I haven't got their permission to say stuff we did, you know, and I had quite a colourful life, shall we say, and yeah, you know, some of those things are better for the campfire.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, than for
they don't
not to be recorded,
not past the statute of limitations.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's no statute on a lot of that stuff in it that happened back in the day. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and you know, it's like.
But that was your past, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much.
This is a new life you're living.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, if I hadn't lived in hell, then I wouldn't know where I ever was.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I'll come around and give you a hug if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks to these two amazing guys in the background.
Great team we've got here. Gratitude. Cheers, buddy. Ah, nice one, man.
Thanks very much.
Real inspiration to me. Thank you.